Guys, what's going on? Welcome to Serial at Midnight. My name is Heath, and I am joined by Cinema Dave for a conversation about 70s cinema. Dave, how are you?
I'm doing well, Heath. How are you? It's so great to see you again. I was looking at the last time we spoke, and I think it was in October. So because we did that other video about the Halloween films, and so
yeah,
it's been a while for sure.
and we got a lot. I got a lot of feedback about that. People loving your channel. People really like the laid back approach. You're not like shooting car windshields and like, hey, come on down to
Yeah, right.
That you really connected with people. And
Well,
you
that's
kind
cool.
of people were looking for you too, so you want to let people know that you're back and where they can find you.
Yeah, I took a little bit of a break at the beginning of the year, and then decided to just kind of reconstruct the channel a little bit and focus it a little bit more. My channel has, I do a lot of film studies. So if I get enamored with a specific director or something like that, I may study the entire director's work or the entire filmography. But so I've been back for a couple of months now, and I'm really enjoying making videos, and I'm loving all the comments and questions and things like that. It's really great. It's really great to see you again. I love your content, as I've said many times before, and I just think the YouTube community is great as far as sharing our love and passion for films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Okay, so I'm going to link to your channel in the description of this video. I'll also link to it at the end of this video, and if I can, I'm going to link to it right here, right now. Really big show.
Right up here.
Right up here. Yeah, somewhere around here. So here's what this video is about. We are talking about the cinema of the 70s. And I feel like I have to be transparent in how I am the one that could not. You came to me, you said, hey, I would love to do like a top 5 or even top 10 70s movies. And we could talk about some movies, maybe some deep cuts or whatever. And I was like, okay. So I started looking through movies. I was like, well, that's a good one. That's a good one. My list was like 20. I had like 20 movies. And I was like, right. Hey, Dave, what if we just have like a conversation about movies? Because I hate to leave this off. Right. I also think there's just a really interesting conversation to be had about 70s movies because it's such a unique era for cinema. All the decades are unique in their own way. I know that a lot of people say the 70s is the best era for movies, and that is probably true. But there's also something very unique about it. And maybe we can hammer down what that is during this conversation. We don't really have any notes,
right?
But we have stuff pulled that we want to talk about. So go ahead.
No, there's so many great things about the 70s too. And you're right. It's hard to really decide, there's so many great movies. But as you were saying, the 70s is just a 10-year span. There's many other decades too that just have as many great films. I mean, this can be kind of a debate. I think I connect with the 70s because I grew up in the 70s, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I think, and even on, even on my channel, Jaws is one of my favorite movies of all time, which I've got a couple videos up there, on that. And the reason there you go, the 4K, right? Did you get the lenticular? You've got the lenticular cover and everything, and I think you and I went back and forth too because Amazon was having a bit of an issue shipping these out. So I think I may have mentioned to you, I went to Best Buy to get the Steelbook. I just absolutely couldn't wait for it. So, but I think the reason I connect with movie, I have a very personal connection with film in general, and so Jaws was one of the movies I went to see with my family. It's a horror movie, but it's one of the times when my family was all together. We had a great time. It was a blockbuster movie in 1975, and so I watch that movie probably once or twice a year at least. That I revisit it. So. It's probably good if we can kind of touch on some of the blockbusters in the 70s too, like Star Wars is an example, The Godfather. I'm not sure I guess The Godfather was pretty much a blockbuster, but
well, it's a different kind. That's something that we can talk about too, is because at the beginning of the 70s, the first half of the 70s is kind of, the 70s are divided like right in half. The first half of the 70s, it's really like there's a golden age of like an auteur kind of a cinema when these directors it was the new Hollywood. In fact, I've even got a couple of some references here I wanted to show you guys. These are a couple of documentaries that I would recommend about the 70s for people who aren't, who haven't been doing this for 30 years or 40 years or however long. They started as the new era of Hollywood. You had the young directors, William Friedkin, you had George Lucas, you had Coppola. and they kind of cut their teeth in the late 60s, but they were coming of age. And it was this unprecedented time of creativity, and the studios were letting these directors explore human stories, showing the flaws of people that maybe hadn't been seen since the noir cycle. And then the mid-70s arrive, and listen, Jaws is an incredible film. It's one of the best movies ever made. I really do believe that. But it did create the blockbuster. And then the latter half of the 70s, you have Star Wars, and you have Alien, and you have all. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it just becomes, by the time 1980, 1981 arrives, movies are changed forever. And they never go back to the way they were in the 70s. Even now, it's never gone back.
Right.
And so it's a really interesting dichotomy. Like, what is it that made... I mean, I guess that's what it is. It was the best of both worlds.
Well, then the other thing too is you have, many of these actors are coming out of the actor's studio, right? So there's a very internal, the way I see it, and we can get into talking about specific actors here, but Brando, Pacino, some of these actors too, they're coming out of a very, there you go, Serpico.
These are my visual aids.
It's a classic. It's a classic, right?
This way I don't have to cut in like a cutaway shot. I just hold this up.
You just shot them, yeah. No, but you get these really intense actors that are coming out of the actor studio. Sidney Lumet, even, who was one of the great directors, I believe, from the 70s, but certainly of all, of many different, the 60s and the 70s as well, into, the last film of his career was in 1997. But he was actually ejected from the actor studio because he was more into realism than anything else, and he created his own group. So a lot of these directors were not only mingling with each other, but they were creating their own acting troupes, if you will, and working with some of the same people to create these films. Just to talk about Sidney Lumet, who was one of my favorite directors, and since you held up Serpico, Sidney Lumet started out in the theater. So he started out as an actor in the theater, was on Broadway for many years. He was in television. I think also you're seeing a lot of these directors coming from television. So yeah, Dog Day Afternoon, absolutely. Sidney Lumet is famous for presenting characters in crisis or characters that are facing a moral dilemma of some kind. And one of the things I was going to show, this is one of my favorite documentaries. I know you were showing some documentaries here. Let me know if you can see this okay. This is a documentary that's on Amazon. I don't know if there's too much glare there, but it's on Amazon Prime right now. It's called By Sidney Lumet. And there's just the front and the back of it. And it's an amazing documentary that I probably watch 2 or 3 times a year. But if your audience is interested in his films, this is one way to get involved in it. It's basically just him. It's kind of like the De Palma documentary, where it's he's just responding to questions. You never actually hear the questions, but you hear him responding to specific parts of his career, parts of his history. So, and he talks about in many of his films where he's presenting this character that's in crisis. So you see that in Dog Day Afternoon with Al Pacino. You see it in Serpico for sure. You see someone going against the system in a way, right? Serpico, was a policeman who was going against some level of corruption in the system. And, speaking of that too, what a great, that's got the inside I think I have the same edition of that too. And that's got a commentary on it too, right?
Yes. No, I don't see a commentary.
Isn't there a commentary? Okay.
Anyway. Photo gallery. Well, it says photo gallery with commentary by director Sidney Lumet. So.
Oh, got it. Yeah. So you see the in the documentary, the Sidney Lumet documentary, he mentions a specific moral dilemma that he goes through at the beginning of his life when he was in the military, and I believe that informs a lot of his films because he's always presenting these types of situations where there's a character that's going against the system, and that particular character has to decide: do I say something? Do I risk my career, or do I just go along with everyone else, right? And so that's one of the things I like about his movies. Outside of the superior direction and just the characters that he brings together, he's also known for a pretty much a rehearsal period for most of his films, which is really good for actors, right? So you're getting like directors that are familiar with working with actors. They're getting them together in advance, and you're building this very intense type of a drama, essentially. And obviously there are comedies in the 70s too. I'm sure we'll get into comedies as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, he has so many films in the 70s, and he's just one of the many directors that,
It was a realism. They were looking for that. It's that early part, because I really do think that once you get past about 75, 76, that's gone.
Yeah.
Not that the creators were not there anymore, but it just became um, everyone seemed to have been chasing the blockbuster model, chasing
Yeah.
these bigger things. Even these directors, maybe not Lumet so much, but so many of the other actors and the performers, it just becomes this bigger thing. But it was a reflection. The movies are, I believe movies are art, and I believe that they are a reflection of the society that we live in, which is one of the reasons why, like, the movies now, people will be like, well, what about now? Like, Marvel movies? Our movies are so reactionary still to 9/11. Like, we are still so angry. All
Yeah.
of our movies are about the invader. They're about, like, us versus them, the outsider. I mean, you look at it. That's where we've been for almost 20 years now. But the 70s were very similar, because you had Nixon, you had Vietnam, you had the whole Watergate thing. There was a lack of trust in
Yeah.
the leadership, and that just trickles down to, it was suspicion. I'm just looking at my stack here, and I'm like,
Sure.
oh yeah, that such a cynical era.
Yeah.
But there was beauty to be found there. I'm reading a book. I've been reading this book for like a month. Hopefully I'll finish it soon. But I'm reading a book called The Big Goodbye. I think it's called The Big Goodbye, not The Long Goodbye. The Big Goodbye. And it's that the thesis of the book is that Chinatown was the last great movie out of Hollywood. And darn if the author doesn't write a pretty convincing case that after Chinatown, it kind of became studio meddling, and that there was just this moment in time. And the production system around that movie, they were letting, like, Polanski, we don't even have to get into Polanski as a person, but as a director,
Yep.
he was chasing this very realistic approach, and it's rooted in Chinatown itself. I didn't pull Chinatown. I should have had that for visual aid. But Chinatown is about, it's a detective in the old style, like an old Hollywood style detective, but it's very rooted in 70s mistrust and in looking for identity. And that is so apparent in so many of these movies. But it doesn't stay there. Like, The Godfather, right? Surely
Sure.
everyone who is watching this video, hopefully, if you haven't seen The Godfather or The Godfather Part 2, hopefully you're at least familiar with it. These are movies about people, about flawed people, ambitious people. And I hope that we can get back to that one day, because we've kind of gone way too far in the other direction. Go ahead.
I hope so. No. I like what you said too about kind of dividing the 70s into, two parts, because one of the things I really love about early 70s films is the realism, is the grit, is the, you see again with Sidney Lumet films, but certainly with other films. One of the films that I pulled today too is this film. I had this Indicator release because a director that was particularly prolific in the 70s was Hal Ashby. Now, this is The Last Detail, and this is an Indicator release, by the way. If you're not familiar with Indicator, I know you have some Indicator titles, right?
I do, yeah.
For sure. They do great releases, and they do sales quite a bit as well.
It's Criterion level. Like, we talked about Criterion.
Yeah.
It's up there.
Absolutely. And so the thing that's one of the things I like about Hal Ashby films is that they're, here, I'll pull, we're pulling from our stacks here, right?
Yeah.
This is also a great documentary called Hal, which is on Amazon Prime also, but you can get the DVD or Blu-ray, and it's a great introduction to Hal Ashby films. And the reason I like Hal Ashby is because he was a bit of a rebel, right? He had this prolific period at the beginning of the 70s. He fought with the studios. He fought to have creative rights to his work. And so it was this, kind of this struggle you're talking about. And some of that grit, some of that struggle comes out in these movies. I'm sure we'll probably talk about this later, but Hal Ashby also has movies like, Shampoo also is from the 70s. As long as we're looking at a Criterion too, we should say that we're expecting, we don't know for sure, but we believe that the Criterion sale is supposed to start tomorrow. Yeah. And this is an exciting time for Criterion fans because it's a Barnes & Noble sale. It's 50% off. Again, with the situation that's happening today, I don't know if they'll have curbside pickup, but certainly you'll be able to order online, I would think. From what I understand, just from reading the Facebook groups, I believe that the sale will be from the 10th of July to the 2nd of August. So it's a good long sale. And it's a one time, if you're interested in Criterion, this is a great time to pick up some of these titles because they're 50% off.
Yeah.
And sometimes Amazon will match those prices. But anyway, I kind of digress there a little bit. But Hal Ashby is also one of my absolute favorite directors from the 70s. And it's because of that realism. It's because of that grit that, those early Jack Nicholson films are just amazing to watch him in action, right?
Yeah.
Five Easy Pieces even too, right?
Yeah.
So I think you really hit on one of the best parts of 70s films, and that is the grit, the struggle, representing that struggle. And it's in the stories, but it's also in what the director had to do to get the film made, right?
Yes. Yeah, and I want to talk more about Nicholson because there's a whole. I want to talk about. If I forget, help me come back to this. But the performances in the 70s and how they never again quite reflected the naturalism of that era. I'll just go and jump into it. Pacino in Serpico and in The Godfather. He was like, never ask me about my business, Kay. Like he's just this little guy. 80s Pacino gets bigger and bigger, get his Scarface and stuff, and it's like he never quite came back down. Nicholson is another guy. Nicholson in the 70s, even in the 60s, again, I'm reading this book about Chinatown, and he was such a philosophy student, and he was very much into the naturalism of the performance and trying to, he brought something. He legitimately tried to, he said his approach was, he did not try to overly prepare, but he tried to live in that character, and it took him about 2 weeks on every movie to figure out exactly who that character was, and he would just try to completely inhabit who that was. I don't know what happened to that Nicholson, because where did that guy go? Right. Because, all through the 80s and the 90s, he just gets bigger and bigger. All these guys, bigger and bigger and bigger. Something special happened in the 70s, and it never. We're still waiting on it to repeat itself again.
Well, but again, speaking about Pacino, you see that transformation in The Godfather, as you were saying, where he starts off as this very innocent, and then gradually through the film. And this is from, again, I believe it's a lot from the training from the actor studio, right? There's an internal part of the performance, I think, that gets lost, and the 70s to me were all about that, looking for that internal life, that internal spirit that kind of takes you through the character. And so you witness the transformation in that film. Yeah. For some reason I was thinking about near the end of the 70s too. One of the films I think that's great near the end of the 70s is Apocalypse Now. I mean, think about how that film got made as well. Yeah. And the performances in there are just, to me, just as gritty, even though it's near the end. I know we're talking the beginning of the 70s and then the end of the 70s, but Apocalypse Now to me stands out as one of those films in the 70s that is at the end. They're still going for some of that same realism, some of that same grit that you see in the beginning. And, Coppola pulls it off. I mean, I think it's, but there was a great struggle to get that film made, of course. But
the movie is also so marked by excess, too. It's the spirit of the 70s. It's almost like the death of optimism or the death of hope. You know what I mean? But right. But it's married with all this excess. It was so ambitious and it was so over the top, and how, I mean, the documentary, what's it? Hearts of Darkness is the documentary. Right?
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Just the story of, you could look at maybe we could even do this, the story of the 70s through the films of the 70s. And we go from this early cynical, this is a good time for me to mention this. Little Fosse and Big Halsey is, it's a movie directed by, who is it? Hold on, let me find it again. Sidney J. Furie. It's got Michael J. Pollard, Robert Redford. I said that weird. Robert Redford. It's like I've never said his name before. Some guy named Robert Redford.
Who's that?
And it's Lauren Hutton's in it. It's 1970. Johnny Cash does the soundtrack for it, and it's such this. It's got 1 foot in the late 60s. Kind of like the Woodstock mentality, but it has the cynicism of the 70s is there. It's like how, it's a really good example of kind of this changing tone, and that tone will continue to change. And it's almost like by the time you get to the mid 70s, we're done with it. Vietnam ends. We have to say Vietnam ends, and it's like, can we hope again? But we don't just hope. Okay, let me find it really quick. Here we go. a movie that everybody has seen, everybody seemingly loves, but it has meaning and it has power. This movie is often criticized for being too, I don't know, syrupy, too saccharine, too hopeful. You know, the big thing is like, well, it shouldn't have won the Oscar that year because it wasn't the best movie. But it's the movie that gave hope. It's the movie that brought back the idea that we actually could go the distance. He doesn't win. Spoilers for Rocky. He doesn't win. He goes the distance. If you marry this to the idea of the 70s, this fatigue, this weariness, this cynicism, our leaders have failed us. Death is everywhere. Who are we? Like, if you marry that narrative to the films, this comes along and it says, we can be more, we can be better. And I love that. That's one of the reasons that Rocky for me continues to resonate.
It's a great film.
It is kind of saccharine, but it's also incredibly human. And I think that, it's an important movie. Yeah, it's a turning point.
I totally agree. And I love the first Rocky. I mean, it's just, it has a lot of that, as you were saying, that hopefulness, but it still has some of the grit though in the beginning of the movie. I mean, it's made almost like, to me, it's like an independent, it's an independent film, Yeah. Small tangent here too. Growing up in the 70s, one of the things I didn't realize till later in life is that on the music side in the 70s, one of the things you see with music to me is, I always thought when I was listening in the 70s, I thought, wow, these are really happy songs. These are great. And then later in life, I listened to the lyrics and I thought, there's happy music with these very depressing lyrics. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, about heartbreak and all these other things that are going on. If you listen to it, it's just like a very interesting, it's interesting to listen to that, because I always thought, well, I'm really happy listening to this, this great stuff. And yet the songs are some of the songs are very depressing. What I mean?
Absolutely.
So it does something when you listen to it, because like I said, I guess I just never listened to the lyrics that closely enough in the 70s. I just heard, wow, this is a cool beat. And so one thing just to kind of maybe transition a little bit too, one of the other things I absolutely love about the 70s, I'm going to use a specific movie for this one, is the way the films were shot, the colors. This is very, the look and feel of a movie in the early 70s. And one of the films I saw just recently, which I absolutely loved, I hadn't seen it before, this is another Sidney Lumet film, The Anderson Tapes. I don't know if you've seen this movie.
I have not seen The Anderson Tapes.
Highly recommend The Anderson Tapes. This is another Indicator movie. But the music, speaking about music too, a lot of these films, you have Quincy Jones doing the soundtrack for many of these movies, which I absolutely love. I absolutely love listening to these Quincy Jones, soundtracks. And I'm often surprised when I see his name come up, and then I go, wow, this is amazing. Quincy Jones does a very odd, kind of soundtrack for this movie. Sean Connery is in it. So this is the 3 films that Sidney Lumet did with Sean Connery. Very different than 007. And visually, the colors in this movie, if you get a chance to watch this movie, I'd love to know what you think about it.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite movies from the 70s now, just, having seen it. And I had heard good things about it, hadn't had a chance to see it. Over the last week I saw it, and it's a little lighter. Okay, it's not as serious. There is a heist involved in the movie, but it's done in sort of an entertainment, maybe kind of, I don't want to say campy way, but it's not as serious. There's some funny moments in it. Martin Balsam plays a very interesting character in the movie too, and you've seen Martin Balsam in so many films, right? So many, crime drama type movies. But anyway, for your audience and for you, I highly recommend this one. It's a really fun movie from the 70s, and I thought it was from 1978. This might even be, no, this is from 1971. Sorry.
See, that's why. It's because it's early 70s. Yeah.
Early 70s. But and to see Sean Connery doing something different, I'm a Bond fan too. Yeah. And the Bond films in the 70s I love. But to see him doing something different and challenging, yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the colors and the way these movies are shot are very interesting to me. The use of the close-up is an example too. I love looking at people's faces, looking at characters' faces really brings me into the story a lot more. And I feel like, close-ups are always used, but it's used a little more creatively, to me anyway, in the movies in the 70s. I don't know if you noticed that or not. But
I do. Can I tell you something that I would not, I wouldn't just volunteer this information, but given this conversation, I think it's applicable. I think a lot of modern filmmakers have lost the filmmaking technique. And I think the 70s may have been the pinnacle of a certain kinds of technique. You close up when you want impact. You use certain angles, movement. There's certain things, lighting, even the use of color. To your point, like everything is like color timed to the moon and back now. But the meaning of the color is not necessarily what it used to be. There were techniques that were used that aren't used anymore because the people that use them are dead or they're stopped making movies. And it's just, again, it's hard to have this conversation about 70s movies and not have the same conversation about and then we lost this. Then this went away. Because we live in an era now. Modern movies they're almost never made by a person, right? They're made by many people, an executive committee, or
a computer, maybe a computer.
Maybe a computer. But the 70s movies, that's that auteur kind of an idea. Like that's one of the things that I liked so much about The Man Who Killed Hitler and then The Bigfoot is that it feels like an auteur movie. It's ambitious. It did not resonate with everybody, but it is a modern movie that does feel like the work of a particular person. It's the work of one person. I want to I have other things that I want to talk about. I don't even know how to organically get there, but can we talk about blaxploitation movies, because that's all over the 70s. This is the era of blaxploitation movies. So I had to pull from the collection. I pulled Shaft trilogy, which I think is, married to this conversation. You have to also talk about how this was an era of. It's so funny because we don't get political on Serial at Midnight. This is not the place for it. We try to exist on this space. Out in space, but like all the stuff that's in the headlines now, it was in the headlines in the 70s as well. Yeah. Like it's like history has repeated itself. So all of the racial discord, the distrust and authority figures, including, this is a whole movie about a guy who's bringing down cops.
Well, but do you think it's the 30-year cycle? It's like a 30-year, 30 years and then it, cycles again. Hopefully we can break the cycle at some point.
But it's been more than 30 years. It's been.
No, I know, but since you're right. True for the 70s.
40 and 50, a minimum of 40.
Yeah.
We have the French Connection. Like this is I've sidetracked from blaxploitation now, but the whole the unrest fueled the art, but the art became these are ultimately kind of angry movies, but they got so much style, man. There's so much. I pulled all
music. Music, yeah.
Got all my Pam Grier movies here. There's just so much empowerment to them, and. You want to talk about the golden age of I didn't even pull any kung fu movies or Jim Brown or anything like that, but this is the era of that as well. Bruce Lee, going back to your Criterion comment, that's the thing that's on the top of my list for the Criterion.
That's coming out. I think that's out already, isn't it?
It comes out on the 14th or the 14th.
14th. So that'll be right in that time for people that want to get a 50% off. That's great. Yeah.
What do you think about? I'm going to throw you a curveball here. We haven't talked about this. What do you think about the movie Taxi Driver?
So my first blush on it is I've seen it a few times. I like it. It's not a movie I revisit a lot. Let's put it that way. I can appreciate it for what it is, but it's not a movie. I have the movie, but I more regularly go back to Sidney Lumet films, Hal Ashby films. Many other, Coppola films, and I can honestly say that I probably haven't seen Taxi Driver in over 10 years. I probably haven't seen it. So that's what that's what I think. I think it was interesting for what it was. I like Paul Schrader as a screenwriter. Paul Schrader did the screenplay for it. What do you think? I think I know what you're going to say about it, but go ahead.
What do you think I'm going to say?
Well, no, I know there were parallels to the Joker, for example, or Joker, right?
Parallels is putting it kindly, but yes. Yeah. No, I struggle with this movie. This is a movie that I think really has a lot to say about the 70s and the time that we're talking about, but yet I don't like Taxi Driver. I actually wrote, so for those who want more of this conversation from my perspective, I wrote a 1-year series, it's 50 chapters of the films of 1976 for fthismovie.net. And I went through all the movies. Not all of them. I went through 50 movies from 1976, and when I got to this one, it just all came out. All the things that I feel about this movie. I think there's an entire generation, maybe two generations, of movie fans that feel like they're supposed to like this movie, and therefore they do like this movie. Certain things just become. You've seen this yourself, I'm sure. If something's around long enough, it just becomes a part of the scenery, and it becomes accepted as, it's the wonderful Martin Scorsese movie with the wonderful Jodie Foster performance, and I think that it's an ugly movie. I think it's a deliberately ugly movie, but Jodie Foster still talks about this movie in terms that she said no one knew how to direct her. She plays like a child prostitute in the movie, which again, 70s. Yeah. You certainly couldn't do that now. Thank goodness you couldn't do that now. But she still talks about no one knew how to direct her. It was very uncomfortable. She was a child trying to do, give a performance of this character that sells sexuality as a child. By the way, back to back with Freaky Friday, or right around the same time as Freaky Friday. I should have pulled Freaky Friday too. I did. And it's kind of heartbreaking for me to watch because.
No, I'm with you on it. I mean, I'm totally with you on it because, as I said, I haven't really revisited it in many, many years. I haven't. I saw it once or twice probably when it came out, and I haven't really looked at it again. So I think you and I are in agreement on it. I don't feel like it's that. There are many more films I like to study better than that one. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but I think you're right. People are taught, oh, we have to like that movie. It's such an important part of the 70s. It's such an important film, and I don't, for what I like anyway, it's not that important.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I there's maybe another conversation that's not for here, maybe another time. But I almost answered the question. Should art contain the real thing? I don't even know how to say the question. So Taxi Driver is a movie with a child prostitute. To get a child to play a prostitute, you have to hire a child to play a prostitute.
Right.
Why would you do that? That's exactly. In my opinion, that's not a great idea. Right. The Chinatown book. I'm back to the Chinatown book. Polanski. There's a scene where Jack Nicholson has to beat Faye Dunaway's character, and he's like, "We're really doing this, guys. Prepare it. We're really doing this." And Jack Nicholson's like, he wants us to really hit it. He wants me to hit you, Faye. And she's like, well, you got to do it. So take after take after take, he just slaps her in the face. It was all day. Her face is red and bruised. I don't like when art contains real violence, animal violence, whatever. This is probably a conversation for another time, but it really did. The 70s is kind of the decade of that. It's it's got to be real. It's got to be, it's cinema verite.
Yeah, some of that too, but I feel like at least the directors that I respect, they know how to work with actors, right? This was before the days of intimacy coordinators. You've heard of that term too, where they hire people on set to make sure that things are appropriate and things that are done right, which I totally believe in. But a director like Sidney Lumet knows actors, knows how to work with it. He talks about just a tangent too, and this is one of the reasons I love Sidney Lumet. Is he talks about a scene with Brando in this movie called The Fugitive Kind, which is not from the 70s, but it's based on a Tennessee Williams play. And he talks about a situation where Brando couldn't get through his, the speech. And it was this long speech, and he got up to a certain point, and he forgot his lines. So he did that 4 times, and Brando finally said, I can't do this. Can we just come back tomorrow? And Sidney Lumet, took him aside and said, listen, we got to get through this. He didn't push him. He knows the sensitivity potentially of an actor, and he knows how to get that performance. And he said to Brando, let's do it as many times as we need to, but we got to get it tonight because tomorrow could be worse. And so he said they did it 32 times, and finally Brando got it, and Brando gave him a hug afterwards. And so to me, that's a director and an artist who understands in a very sensitive way, and this is 60s and the 70s, how to work with performance, how to be respectful, how to make sure that there's nothing that is inappropriate happening on sets, which I totally agree with you on that too. I think we're in this age too where we're looking at artists and saying this is I know you've talked about this a little bit about their personal life versus what they do on screen. And for me anyway, for some artists, I have a hard time with it. Roman Polanski, Kevin Spacey, some of these other folks, I kind of have a hard time with revisiting their work. And I know it's kind of a bit of a controversial issue, but
Yeah.
But that seems to be the age we're in right now. So I don't know. That takes us off on quite a tangent, but I think it's a good conversation to have for sure.
Yeah. We can use it as a jumping off point for some other stuff, because talking about, violence and role models and things like to separate, that seems like a really good point to maybe bring up a couple of movies that were a turning point for certain things. So Dirty Harry and Death Wish, both movies more or less about vigilante justice, taking the law into your own hands, not following the system to get your results. And it's interesting because I never knew this until recently, but I heard this recently, that the first Dirty Harry movie was marketed when it first came out. The goal, like in the script and everything, the goal was like, he's a bad guy. He has taken the law into his own hands. How far will one man go? Is he mad? And the public reaction was so supportive of the character of Harry Callahan that they were like, and he's a hero. And so they kind of just leaned into it.
Right.
Sequels, everything. And it's like, wow. And Death Wish is the same thing. It's such a reflection of our modern times. The idea of like, well, I'll just take the law into my own hands. And these became heroes. Charles Bronson. The ambiguity of Death Wish in Death Wish 2 and 3 and 4 is like bazookas in the hood and stuff. I mean, it's just so huge.
Well, but don't you think some of these action films, right, take us into the 80s, right? I mean, this is where the franchises are developed and
it's where it's born.
And everything. Yeah. So I feel like, with the blockbuster mentality, saying, hey, how can we stretch this idea for, two or three more films, right? I feel like that's kind of what Dirty Harry is. Although I like the Dirty Harry series for sure.
Oh yeah, they're good, but they're just they're that thing that we're talking about. Yeah, absolutely. This is a good opportunity though it looks like 37 minutes or so to maybe start talking more about those blockbusters and the changing tones, because it's now we're into the mid to later 70s, and I gotta bring up, and this is more controversial stuff, but Bad News Bears has not aged well by current PC standards, but you know what? Bad News Bears was huge in the 70s.
How many sequels were there? 4?
There were 3 sequels and a remake, reboot sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Bad News Bears, In Breaking Training, and the Bad News Bears Go to Japan. And that goes into the 80s, I believe. No, they're all 70s. 76, 77, 78.
Wow.
Got any thoughts on the Bad News Bears?
I mean, I probably saw that one time, back in the 70s, and maybe haven't gone back to it yet. So, what do you like about the films? What do you like about those films?
Well, like is a strong word. I do like them. I do like them, but I'm afraid of backlash now. I'm afraid they're so politically incorrect, and my thesis is that these are the movies that. They were the first movies that were kind of made for Generation X, specifically for latchkey kids. These are latchkey kids. Their parents are not involved. Walter Matthau is the coach. He's an alcoholic. The first movie begins, he's like putting beer into a cooler, and then he puts the cooler in the car, and then he cracks a beer, and he starts driving. It's while he's drinking his beer, and he's horrible to these kids. He manipulates them, but it's real, and that's the world that we grew up in the 70s and the 80s. Yeah. And so I don't even know if I do like them. I do like these movies, but racial epithets, every racial epithet you can think of, but then at the same time I have to be honest, because there's no I can't believe you said that. That's not how it, everybody's just like, oh yeah, you got a problem with that? Right. Hey, take off. That's it.
Right. Right.
I kind of wish we could get back to that. You said what? Hey, take off, and then you just go there's no keyboard. There's no keyboard consequences. Nobody gets canceled. You just I can't believe you said that.
No, but this is interesting too, though. This is something I've been thinking about. Maybe this. I know we don't want to get political either, but this does take us into. Yeah, we're already. Yeah, we're. Yeah, we're. We did. Yeah, we're already there. But, there is this idea of, editing of content, right? You have the physical media, you have the movies as originally intended, and there is this situation happening right now where people are looking at things, okay, all right, I'm going to get myself into trouble now, too. So one of the things I saw weeks ago is some controversy about Blazing Saddles, okay?
Yeah.
And I think it went away very quickly because Richard Pryor wrote the script for it. And so they said, well, Richard Pryor was fine with it, and that quickly went away. But I think my point is there's this evaluation going on of this material where some people say, well, that's on a streaming service. We can cut that out now. We'll pull down Gone with the Wind. We'll pull down some of these things. We'll re-edit it, put it up with a disclaimer, whatever the case may be, so we don't offend people. And I'm not sure how I feel about it yet, right? I think you've talked about it before. Sometimes it's good to have this media that's uncut. You have the physical media for it to maybe know that it happened. Not that you agree with it, not that you think it's, as you're saying, politically incorrect things in some of these movies, but should it be cut and we forget about it? It's hard to really, it's a really hard area to get into. I'm not a big fan of the streaming services just taking things down and re-editing them, I guess is my point. I feel like, I can watch it and say, yeah, that's offensive and I'm sorry it's in there, but at least it's the original, and at least we, can see that it's there. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think this is a very hard area to,
I mean, ultimately I feel the same. I don't think that you make the future better by erasing the past.
Yeah.
And I think that this is cynical, but I think that this is how I feel. I think that it's driven by profits. I think it's driven by finances. And I think that the companies that are taking these things down just don't want the negative press. And if there was no negative press, they'd be fine with that stuff up there. It doesn't make it right. And I'm not defending things that are egregious. I'm just saying that you never learn from if you don't know about it. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing now is there's so much outrage because a lot of this is coming from the younger generations and they just weren't aware of this until now. And they're like, wait a minute, what? And a part of that is they've also lost the context. And context does not always make things right either. But if you have the context of so much of Pryor's comedy was racially driven and it was angry. And, this is the Saturday Night Live sketch with him and Chevy Chase, legendary Saturday Night Live sketch. There's social commentary to that sketch. But if you're only looking at it from it has the N-word in it, just in case anyone, just to be clear. If you're only looking at it as they said the N-word on Saturday Night Live. Well, it was in service of making a point about racism and about it's context. Context is so important. And there's no conversation about context these days. It's just get it off there as quickly as you can. And all that's going to do is to erase it for future generations. And then if they ever discover it, it just repeats itself. So existence does not equal acceptance. I guess that's what I'm saying.
No, I totally agree. And I'm glad we talked a little bit about that because it is an area, especially physical media, collectors and people that enjoy entertainment, there's many things in film that you see that it's not, that you may not agree with and that it's not right. But to edit everything, I think, is also, a mistake in some cases. I was going to kind of take us off into another direction here, just to get us out of this hole that
Please do it. Bail us out.
I'm going to show you one of my favorite movies from the 70s. Now, I watched this movie a lot, but it kind of gets us into a comedy area.
Nice.
And this is a movie called The Goodbye Girl, and I love this movie, and I think Richard Dreyfuss won an Academy Award for it, if I'm not mistaken.
Richard Dreyfuss.
He did. And, I think a lot of this, too, is, for me anyway, I saw Jaws. I love Richard Dreyfuss. I love Robert Shaw. I love Roy Scheider. So after that point, I went to see everything else that they did. Now, this happens to be an adaptation of a Neil Simon play, and he's great in it. He's hilariously funny. This is, I think the thing we haven't really touched on too much because we've been talking so seriously about things.
Yeah.
Is the comedies. Yeah. There's a lot of great comedies that happen in the. I'll show you another one that's one of my favorites, which is only on DVD, and I wish it was on. I wish they had a Blu-ray of this, but Going in Style. Have you seen this one?
No, I have not.
So this is George Burns. Oh. Yeah, George Burns, Art Carney, Lee Strasberg of the Actors Studio in here. Yeah. This is a great movie. This is these guys pulling off a heist of some kind. I don't want to give away the whole thing, but it's not that it's from the 70s. Can you really spoil a movie from the 70s at this point? I don't know.
No.
So but those are some of the comedies that I like. The Goodbye Girls, specifically, just because it's just a romantic comedy. It's great. This is near the latter part of the 70s too, so you've lost maybe some of the seriousness. You're taking some of the stars from the blockbusters that have been in the mid 70s and moving them into this Al Pacino-esque, if that's a thing, into like, more comedy. Al Pacino does another movie called Author, I think late in the 70s or early 80s, where he plays kind of a comic, character to get out, to transform him into more of a versatile actor, right? Where he can play, he can do comedy, he can do these other things. So other than the Bad News Bears, do you have any other comedies that you like? Well, the Holy Grail.
I really don't. I overlooked comedies altogether. I can name some off the top of my head. I mean, there's all the, like recently I've been going through, like Kino Lorber's put out so many 70s, like lighter 70s movies that I've really had a good time exploring. Those are not the ones that I think you tend to see or hear a lot about. So it's kind of a discovery for me.
Yeah.
Monty
Python and the Holy Grail is one of the ones I have. I don't know if you like.
I do.
Yeah.
People keep wanting to do commentary, like we do Patreon commentaries and we do Patreon group watches, and people want to have a group watch for the Holy Grail. And every time that comes up, I'm like, that doesn't strike me as like a group movie where everyone sits there. It's not that kind of a movie. It's very like cerebral. But if they vote for it,
and the thing is too, I remember, Monty Python. I mean, when I was, in the 70s, I remember having a black and white TV that I would set on a chair in front of my bed and watch the Monty Python, the show. And that was, it was on PBS at the time, right? So you're watching these. I don't know if you did the same thing, or if you had a situation where you say, wow, these guys are really funny. Nobody else was watching it other than my, nerd friends in high school, basically, or my geek friends in high school. But we loved it though. And, the Holy Grail was one of the great, and I watched it recently. I would say a couple of years ago, I watched it, and it really holds up. It's hilarious.
For me, Life of Brian is the masterpiece.
Life of Brian is great too.
Such a satire of the whole religious system. And as someone who grew up very deep in the religious system, like the commentary on organized religion, it's not a commentary on Jesus or on God or any of that. It's specifically directed at organized religion, the church itself, and it's so spot on. Yeah. I think that's the masterpiece, but it's also very, very controversial. So
we tried to steer clear of controversy, but we just ran right into
it. We
just
walked right into it, and then we're going to talk about. Yeah, I don't know. Do you consider American Graffiti to be a comedy? Because I did pull that one. I did kind of want to talk about.
I like American Graffiti. I don't know that I would consider it a comedy, but
yeah.
I mean, there's definitely some funny parts to it. I love that movie though. It's
70s
great.
movies just kind of tend to defy genre so many times. You know what I mean? Like they have elements of drama and of comedy and they'll turn on a dime too.
Yep.
I don't really have any comedy.
I was trying to think of some comedies because everything I pulled in the beginning was all very serious. So I thought there's comedies, So
I'll tell you what, I will say this. Any conversation about 70s movies, I have to bring this up. This is such an optimistic and hopeful film.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it's also cynical. I mean, it's got some stuff in there that's if you watch this, how do I frame this? Sometimes people come to me and they say, I rewatched Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory as an adult, and it's got some stuff in there. I'm like, yeah, it does. It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Gene Wilder's approach to that, but we could just go do a whole thing on Mel Brooks movies. Gene Wilder and Young Frankenstein.
I didn't realize Young Frankenstein, 1974. Yeah. So when I watched it last year again, Young Frankenstein. And I thought this is a great movie. It must have been from the 80s or something. I looked, it was 1974. I'm like, this is a great. So that's another great comedy with Gene Wilder too, who's absolutely brilliant.
Have you ever seen Silent Movie by Mel Brooks?
I have seen that.
I have
the box set. Isn't that the one where Marcel Marceau he's the mime and he has the only speaking part of the movie?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's hilarious.
It's 1976 and it's got, it's Mel Brooks, Marty Feldman, Dom DeLuise, Sid Caesar, Bernadette Peters. That's the one that seems to have flown under a lot of radars, and it's in that box set. So I say, to anybody that has that set, if you haven't watched Silent Movie, it's a treat.
It's good. It's a good one. Yeah.
And it's got so many. Paul Newman's in it. Burt Reynolds. We have to talk about Burt Reynolds.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we forgot about that. Yeah. Well, those are some great comedies, right? Go ahead.
Well, I don't know. This is the era of Smokey and the Bandit. This is the era of so many Burt Reynolds movies. I did pull. What year is this? I did pull. These are two of my favorites. I pulled White Lightning. Neither of these are comedies, by the way. So, but I pulled White Lightning and the sequel, Gator, from a couple of years later. And
now was Hooper in the same? Was Hooper in the 70s? I thought it was in the 70s, but I'm not sure.
I think it's later. I'm going to check real quick while we're talking here. I want to say, I'm not going to guess. Hooper. Nope, that's Hopper. Hooper is 1978. Yeah.
So. There you go. Yeah. Those are great films. Those are really great films. And the Smokey and the Bandit films are awesome too. Talk about a troupe of actors with Dom DeLuise and or Cannonball Run, I guess I'm thinking of too. But
oh yeah. But what those movies have done is they've taken the anti-hero of like Dirty Harry or Death Wish, Charles Bronson, and they've kind of made him a hero, but he's a lovable hero. And we kind of move into a whole other thing. It's like, it's this whole era, and this kind of bleeds into the 80s as well, even to like Dukes of Hazzard and stuff like that. But it's like the lovable scoundrel who runs from the law, but he doesn't mean any harm. He's just trying to do his thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like making these heroes out of, he's an anti-hero for sure, but he's not a malicious one. He doesn't kill anybody. There's no violence, really. So I love that stuff.
Except for the outtake. I always remember the outtakes with Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise, and, trying to get Dom DeLuise to stop laughing to do a take. I thought was, those guys were hilarious, I feel like.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Great team.
Yeah.
What else have you got over there? You got anything else in your stack?
All right. So yeah, one of the movies that I was thinking that I was going to recommend to your audience too, if they're into Criterion, and this has got to be my top 3 movies of the 70s, and it kind of takes us maybe a little bit more serious, but if you haven't seen this movie, Klute. Have you seen Klute?
I have not.
Highly recommend this movie. One of the best movies, Alan J. Pakula from the 70s. This is 1971 again, so we're at the beginning of the 70s, but you get quintessential 70s, the grit, the character. Jane Fonda won, I think she won an Academy Award for this as well. Yeah, Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda is amazing in this movie. They built her an apartment that she actually lived in for a while, so she had a lot of her own things in there. She originally didn't want to play the character in Klute, but it is one of the best crime dramas, I think, of all time to me. And so that's one of the ones, if you have any of your audience interested in the Criterion Collection and they're interested in the 70s, this to me is up. I think it's on the top of many people that like the 70s have this one at the top of their list. And, for great reason. You have Donald Sutherland in there as well. Another Donald Sutherland movie that I pulled too, because we didn't really talk too much about it. I was trying to find each of the genres, or as many as I could find, but this is also another great movie from the 70s.
Yeah.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the remake of it. And I love this movie. I watch this movie every year as well. And a lot of it's because the Star Trek movies were coming out as well. So I'm a big fan of Leonard Nimoy. So he was in this movie. And I think that's what brought me to the movie. But I love the story. I love Jeff Goldblum. I love, so those are, I think that wraps up what I have over here.
So is the Star Trek movies, how do you feel the first movie is of the 70s? How do you feel about the Star Trek, the motion picture?
It's long, but I can tell you as a fan, that's my only comment about it.
Yeah.
No, I think
it
was good because I was such a big fan of Star Trek. So for me to see a Star Trek movie in the 70s and everybody get back together again, I was thrilled to see it. I don't care how long. I would have stayed there for 4 hours to watch that movie. But when you watch it later, it's long, and I mean, I love, for Star Trek, we could talk a lot about Star Trek too, but those first images of the ship, when you see the ship for the first time in movie format, you're like, whoa, this is great, because you've only seen the TV thing, TV version.
And at the time, it was like this grainy, it was like model, it was just grainy and whatever. Yeah. That's why there's so many shots of that ship, and people just like.
Yeah, you're just watching that ship, and then, the back and forth with there's a lot of, they could have cut a lot out of the movie, right? But like I said, me as a person in the 70s going to see that movie, I was all in. So.
But there's a Robert Wise director's cut that's actually even longer.
Longer.
Yeah.
But
I
Star
love
Trek
it.
2 is where it's at. Yeah, Star Trek 2, Wrath of Khan, but that's later, right? So.
See, my favorite is, I think the first one is my favorite. That's a hot
Oh,
take,
really?
but
Really?
I really
Oh,
love that first one because it's the only one of those movies that really embodies Gene Roddenberry's original vision. It's
good point.
upward
Yeah.
reaching. It's about living in harmony. It's so Gene Roddenberry, and they kind of got away from that. They kind of got into the whole, hey, let's make this more like Star Wars, which
Yeah.
if the J.J. Abrams movies, they're still doing that, So
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly.
I have a couple here that I'll
Yeah.
just fly through really quick. I just wanted to shout out that Westworld is not a new series. It's not a new idea. This has been around since the 70s. And even this is Michael Crichton. He wrote and directed it. And it's, again, kind of like, what if the technology that that it's entertaining us? Like, what if that turned against us? What if, the tool becomes the owner? And I think that's
Yul Brynner. I mean, Yul Brynner's terrifying, right? In that movie. I mean,
yeah,
he's terrifying to me. Having seen that movie as well, I love that movie.
it's really ahead of its time. Things we're still
and it
talking
holds
about
up
today, Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing about these movies too, for me anyway, I feel like there's a lot of these. Some movies don't hold up as well, but a lot of movies like Westworld really hold up for me anyway. I love watching that again.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that, again, there's a modern take where you might watch this and be like, "Oh, this is silly," because we chase like gritty. That's why Batman has to be so dark, and
Yeah.
there's a movement now where it's like we can't enjoy anything that's not ridiculously gritty, which is interesting because the more gritty something tries to be now, the more I'm
doesn't
like,
look like it.
that's
Yeah,
artificial.
exactly.
Yeah, like I see right through that. That you're just being silly now. But so another one, Michael Crichton connection and Robert Wise, to go back to our Star Trek connection, the Andromeda Strain, a movie about, pandemics,
Viruses.
quarantines, viruses. That's not new either. We've all been there before, and this is another great place to start. What year is this? 1976, 1970.
So basically, what you're saying is the '70s touches on all the controversies that we're facing today. That's what you're saying.
Yep. I'm just gonna cut that part out. That'll
Okay.
be I'll just that by itself. It'll be like 30 seconds long. Hey guys, 70s did it first.
There it is. We predicted it.
1971, by the way. This is 1971. And then lastly, I just feel like we have the one thing we haven't really talked about is how the 70s also were pretty much the birth of the modern horror film as we now recognize it, the slasher cycle that would take on a zombie life of its own in the 80s, but it started in the 70s. There'd been stuff before. We could go back to Psycho, but we could even do before that. But
No, but in terms of independent horror, though, I mean, Halloween, started out because even Psycho was well planned out, right? All the shots and everything were well planned out by Hitchcock. So I feel like, to me anyway, Halloween is one of the first independent. I mean, outside of maybe Night of the Living Dead or things like that. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that I'm not a huge, I'm a horror fan, but I don't know a lot about horror, especially early horror. But I feel like, for me anyway, it was an independent film, right? John Carpenter was making a film for very little money on the streets of Pasadena, to make it look like, Haddonfield, Illinois, or wherever the thing was. When I lived in California, I used to like to drive in Pasadena because I could see the streets that some of the streets that he used. Some of the streets in Pasadena look exactly like, and I remember him talking about having one bag of leaves that he had to scatter around everywhere to make it look like that. So that's very independent filmmaking, right? Right there.
Yeah, it reflects the times. Once again, it's a great example of what we're talking about. Well, that's the last of my stack. So I guess
we've run the gamut. Yeah, we've run the gamut. We got through all of our stacks. Wow.
So I think that conversation. Look, we're right at about an hour. I think that just shows you the power of the 70s as far as like the spectrum and how many. It's a powerful decade. Is it the best decade of cinema? That's going to be subjective, but it's a powerful decade for. So much of what we love was done in it was created in the 70s. Now, nothing. I have to cover my bases here because I often say that nothing is new. It was all done probably in the 30s. But the modern take, Christopher Nolan is making 70s movies. Quentin Tarantino is making 70s movies. Like the directors of today, this is what they're making the movies that they grew up with, and that's the 70s.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Well, Dave, tell people where you do your plugs, conduct your. You know what? You talk so much about Sidney Lumet. You just did a crossover podcast episode about Sidney Lumet. Tell people about that.
Right, with my good friend from Japan, Daisuke Beppu, who has a great channel, a great YouTube channel also, and he's got the most amazing collection of Criterion Collection movies on Laserdisc. I think he has every one of them, which is what kind of brought me to his channel. Great guy, highly recommend his channel. So my channel is, Cinema Dave Media. I have a very modest channel, and I primarily do my film studies, or I talk about, I do the same thing as you do, Heath. I have hauls sometimes. I order stuff, and I bring it in, and people like to see what you got, right? I mean,
but there's so much substance on your channel, and I have to shout that out. That's what people love about that, is you speak with such knowledge and such passion, enthusiasm, and knowledge, and that's who could ask. Which I love.
I have to, like I said, I have to say, since I was in high school, I just absolutely love film and TV. So I really try to focus on those things that really pique my interest, just like you do on your channel, pretty much, right? Yeah. So if you get a chance to take a look at my channel, go for it. And I'm also Cinema Dave on Instagram too. So if you want to reach out on there, I'm very active on Instagram, which I know you are as well, right? I think you're a little bit more active on Instagram now, right?
I try to be once a day. I try to post something once a day.
And I want to say too, like I've said many times before, I absolutely love your channel. It's one of the best on YouTube, and I mean that from my heart. And so I wish you much success. I don't think we've had a chance to talk since you've reached 15,000 subscribers, so congrats on that.
Thank you.
And I know it continues to grow, and I just love your channel. Amazing content, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
Oh, absolutely. We will have to, maybe next time we can talk about the 80s or something like that. We'll have to come back and do something else. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm going to link to your Instagram and your, again, YouTube channel in the description of this video. So guys, click through, give him a sub, give him a follow on Instagram. For Serial at Midnight, for Cinema Dave. Guys, thanks so much. Take care. And until next time, we will catch you later.